Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Contractor Evolution. This is your host, Benji. I'm really excited for today's episode. It's just me. It's going to be short and sweet, but we've got some really cool stuff to share. So let me set this up. We have worked with over 1,500 contractors and home service entrepreneurs since 2015. That's a lot of reps, right? And I want to share with you today a new framework that we've been developing called the Contractor Growth Phases. And there are 4, okay? Operator, manager, leader, and strategist. We're going to unpack all of them. As businesses evolve and grow, they follow extremely consistent patterns, but nobody has really dialed this in. Nobody has really studied this or researched it or written about it or talked about it for blue collar businesses yet. And that's what we're doing today. This is our attempt. And to be honest, I actually think it's pretty good. I want to give a big shout out to my friend Eric Hatterscheit, who sort of pioneered this idea for us here at Breakthrough Academy. He conducted most of the research. He really built this framework for us. So shout out to you, Eric. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say, which kind of makes sense because if you know Eric, he's actually pretty tall. Look, the reason we're talking about this is because every single one of you listening is in one of these 4 phases right now. And sometimes it's just helpful to know you're not the only one feeling stuck there. And also, I'm going to share some of our BTA wisdom on what it takes to evolve out of the stage that you're in and into the next one. If you want to learn more about Breakthrough Academy and how we systemize contracting businesses for growth, you can do that clicking the link in the description below. Lastly, I want to say this. Things take time. If you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling impatient with the phase that you're in, remember this. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but they dramatically underestimate what they can get done in a decade. So hang in there.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Let's start with the first phase, shall we? We call this one the operator. Now, if you started your business from scratch, if you've gone through the brain trauma, and that is the right word for it, brain trauma of creating something out of nothing, if you've waded your way through the literal swamp of stress and exhaustion and anxiety associated with that grassroots startup stage, then you know the operator phase firsthand. If you're there in the operator phase right now and you're listening to this, I see you. I respect the shit out of you. It takes a gutsy man or woman to say, you know what? I can do this. And I'm going to talk more about what it takes to get out of this stage, the things you can do. But right here at the outset, I just want to acknowledge some of the newer business owners listening. If you are going through hell, keep going. That's it. You're exactly where you need to be. This won't last forever. And believe it or not, you're actually going to get to a place where you kind of miss this. You'll be dealing one day with a multi-million-dollar P&L, a huge complex problems that you're having to deal with all the time. And you're going to look back on this stage and kind of miss it for what it is, which is a messy, beautiful, necessary chapter of your story. So just embrace it. I wanted to get that out of the way. Now, if you're through that phase already, think back to that time. What a shit show, right? It's like you, maybe a couple helpers, and let's be honest, none of them are amazing. You're driving around town in a used truck or a used van. There's probably flying out the back all the time. You've got some dorky flyers and a barely functional website that looks like it was designed by a 5-year-old. You've got some equipment that's partly working but mostly broken. There's a ton of excitement and a ton of passion, but not much else, right? You might even look back and go, man, I was clueless. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I think a lot of you can relate to that situation. Now, unless you inherited a business from a parent or you acquired one through a broker, everyone listening has been there, right? And while the operator phase is by far the most exhausting, there are actually a few things about it that are kind of nice. You have really low overhead. right? You don't have a shop or office yet. You don't have a fleet of vehicles. You don't have a team of managers and non-revenue producing salaries that you have to look after. So you make pretty good money. Even if you don't know what you're doing, it's a profitable little entity. It's nimble and it's easy to maneuver. So like making pivots, completing small implementation projects, the few that you would even do, it all happens relatively fast. It's a simple organism. Like you can get your head around it quite easily. Sell a job, schedule a job, produce job, get paid, that kind of thing. And the last thing I would say, and this might sound kind of weird, but you're young and dumb. It's like the entrepreneurial version of being a teenager. The best analogy I can think of is like your first car, right? Like you're looking back on it, you wouldn't want to trade in that for what you drive right now, I'm sure, but you probably look back on it fondly with some nice memories, some warm thoughts. Now, the drawbacks, and there are many. You don't really own a business, you own a job, and it's a pretty hectic job at that. You have a small team or no team and no systems, which means you basically do everything yourself. It's very hand to mouth, as I just described a second ago. And as a result of this and a bunch of other reasons, the workload is just not sustainable. Now, the reality is many, and I might even say most contractors actually stay here forever. And you know what? Like, there is a market for the operator. The world needs operators. I'm not making some moral judgment or some claim that these businesses are bad. I'm just trying to give an objective assessment of the various phases. And this is just the first one. And if you listen to this podcast, you're growth minded, you're systems minded, you read, you listen to podcasts, etc., it is safe to assume you want to grow out of this stage. So let's talk about how you do that. If you ask most operators what's holding them back, they falsely believe, and they will falsely tell you, it's their time. They'll say, man, I'm wearing so many hats. I ain't got no time to work on my business. Right? This whole idea is pretty well articulated in the E-Myth. And I was that guy, so I can make that joke, but we have a slightly different take on what the true obstacle is for operators. The problem that, when solved, truly helps operators evolve into the next phase is their pricing model. Hear me out on this. They haven't mastered their money-making equation yet. They are ballpark quoting most of what they do, and then to boot, they don't do any job costing after the fact. So for whatever money they do make is by accident. It's not intentional. It's unscientific. It's willy-nilly. There's never any goal versus actual analysis, and because they have no overhead, they can actually get away with this. They do make some money, right? Like you make hay on a few jobs, you break even on a few others, you maybe take a bath on a few, and it all works out in the end. It all evens out in the wash. Here's where it gets interesting though. Because they don't have their estimating or the job costing dialed, that money-making equation I was talking about, they don't have a reliable gross profit center in their business yet. That unreliable profit center, the up and down cash flow cycle, is holding them back on a subconscious level. They don't even realize this is happening. It's holding them back on a subconscious level from making a few of the key hires and investments needed to begin evolving out. And it's simple stuff, guys. A job site manager or a foreman, maybe even it's just a laborer on site, maybe a CRM, a decent bookkeeper, a part-time admin. It doesn't actually take much to start ascending out of the operator phase. But if you're trying to address the wrong symptoms, you'll stay there forever. So to be really clear here, if you're in the operator phase, figure out your money-making equation. Dial in your estimating, figure out your production rates, upload them into an estimating tool, then start doing diligent monthly job costing, right? You need that feedback loop. Did I make money on that job? Did I lose money on that job? By how much and why was that? Was it materials? Was it issue? Was it labor? Am I totally misjudging the scope and size of these projects? Build a reliable profit center so you have the confidence necessary to make those early stage investments, and that is what will pull you out of the operator phase. Okay, let's talk wardrobe. My beautiful outfit today, I'm feeling pretty in pink, is brought to you by J. Davis Painting, owned by Jeff McLeod and Kirsten Hardy. Here are the notes from them. We specialize in painting things pink. There you go. We'll paint your home or business other colors too. We've been in Breakthrough Academy for 2 years. We work with Coach Thomas. We're located in the east end of Toronto. I asked them for one challenge and one win. What is one big challenge you're working on to solve this year? We need to improve our lead sources over the slower winter months. Yeah, that's the plight of all painters and all seasonal businesses, actually. And a win was we recently set up a KPI tracking system to help our team monitor and stay on top of their own KPIs. What allowed us to do this was hiring an administrator to help us track and organize data, learning how to create pivot tables to manipulate that data, and connecting the data and pivot tables to each employee's goal setting and review documents. That sounds like a really powerful tool that you guys should share with the rest of the Breakthrough Academy. Thanks for the sick fit this week, Jeff and Kirsten. Really appreciate it all. If you want to work with amazing contractors like Jeff and Kirsten, check out BTA. Let's get back to the episode. The manager phase. We know this phase extremely well because this is where a huge chunk, I'd say half of new Breakthrough Academy members are stuck when we start working with them. Contractors in the manager phase have added a little depth to their bench, right? They may at this point have an office manager who's taken a bunch of the admin load off their plate, a foreman, a job site manager maybe who's given them a modicum of separation from the job site, although they're still there a lot. Like they've got a couple pieces at this stage, but here's the trap. By adding some players and boosting their production capacity, they now have a machine that needs to be fed constantly. So now at this stage, sales becomes your main hustle. You can't afford not to be selling all the time because you hired these people, you promised them work, and without realizing it, you've doubled or tripled the quantity of leads, estimates, and sales needed. Furthermore, now that you have a little nucleus of a team, you need to manage them, hence the name. Like when it was just you and a couple helpers, and let's be honest, some of them were probably paid under the table. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone. This whole management thing wasn't a thing, but now all of a sudden there's HR, there's scheduling, there's training, there's onboarding, there's payroll, like the list goes on. So this stage is fun on one hand because it's usually the first time that you're feeling like you're truly building something, but it simultaneously sucks because it's actually as much or more work than the operator phase. But in many cases, you're not actually making any more money. You've got some real bills to pay now. One other comment about this phase. It's usually in the manager phase that you begin to dabble in technology and tracking systems. Here's what I mean. You start to use QuickBooks because somebody said you need to, but you only sort of know how to use it. The office manager that you hired says you need a CRM, so you do a Google search. You get sold on the wrong platform because let's be honest, you don't really know what you're looking for in the first place. And again, you kind of use maybe 30% of it. And like these are noble and genuine attempts at systemization. I'm not knocking it. They do provide some visibility into marketing, sales, production, financial KPIs, but you know deep down, you definitely don't have the full picture yet. Here's where a ton of managers stay stuck. You have knowledge gaps, big ones, but because you're this big, important contractor with employees now, you're too afraid to ask for help. So here's how you evolve out of it. To get to the leader phase, which is where things get really interesting and fun, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, to get to the leader phase, you need two things. You need structure and systems. These are two things Breakthrough Academy does exceptionally well. You might even say this is our unique ability as an organization. Your org chart needs to be structured in a thoughtful and intelligent way instead of everyone doing a little bit of everything. The roles on that org chart need to be structured so that everyone knows how they can best contribute. Your schedule needs to be structured so instead of battling through random and chaotic days that slip into weeks, there is a structured approach to how you spend your most precious resource, your time. You need a system for sales so that you can begin thinking about handing sales off to someone else one day. You need a system or a few systems for production so that you stop getting called back to the job site when you know you need to be doing more important stuff. You need a system for hiring so that instead of hoping and praying that your dream candidate just shows up one day, you have a reliable stream of good candidates to choose from. The key to moving out of the manager phase and into the leader phase is structure and systems, and this is something that BTA does exceptionally well. The leader phase. Okay, so this is where things start to get really cool. Again, another phase we know intimately. This is where I'd say the other half of our new members are when we start working with them. So get this, through the structure and systems that you've implemented, the true shape of the organization is beginning to form. There's actually 4 hallmark signs, 4 kind of quintessential indicators that signify someone's arrival at the leader phase. Let me go through them. You have a detailed and accurate KPI tracking system across the organization that reports on a weekly basis that allows you to make data-driven decisions. And you now rely way less on your gut and way more on evidence. And this is a good thing. You have 3 distinct departments that drive the business: production, sales, and admin. You as an owner are driving revenue, gross profit, net profit, etc. through those divisions I just described. In other words, you're not selling or producing the jobs yourself, but you're leading the people who are. And lastly, you have standard operating procedures built and implemented for all of the core functions of your business. If you have that stuff in place right now, you are in the leader phase, and congratulations. It's a great place to be. Here's what's awesome about it. You have, probably for the first time, a regained sense of control. It's not perfect. You still have people quit. You still have the occasional tricky customer, but the days of things feeling like a never-ending dumpster fire are firmly in the rearview mirror. And that's a big deal. Typically, in the leader phase, your business is starting to make some serious dough too. You probably have a 6-figure or multi-6-figure net profit, and this is after you pay yourself a salary. You have an entity now that cash flows, and it's often to the point where you need to start thinking about tax and investment strategy. And lastly, and I don't think enough people appreciate this, your business has made you someone in your community. Like, you're not the mayor of your city. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but through the connections that you've made with your staff, with your customers, with your vendors, even some of your competitors, you have a real sense of community around you now, right? Business, when done well, can be such an amazing catalyst for your social life. And I don't think enough people appreciate that point about it. So there's a lot to like. But like anything, there are some drawbacks. Let me go through them. You now carry a serious overhead. You're running $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 payrolls every 2 weeks. You have to constantly battle against what we call a bloated overhead. Actually, I'm going to do a quick tangent on this. This is really important to unpack. The size of your business in the leader phase warrants quite a few non-revenue producing roles. Administrators, sales coordinators, production managers, the list goes on. Now, you need these people because you obviously can't lead everything yourself, but at the same time, this poses a serious risk because, and if you're in the leader phase, you know this very well already, it's easy for these overhead roles to inflate and expand and actually not produce an ROI. Think about it this way. If one of your workers on site isn't very productive, is dragging their feet, or just frankly isn't that good at their job, it's clear as day. And in many cases, you won't even have to fire them because the crew that they work with will do it for you. They'll do it before they even tell you. But when we're talking about these more managerial, more office-based, more abstract roles, it's incredibly easy for underperformers to sort of hide within the bigger system. And it's quite common for businesses at this stage to be carrying, I'm not joking about this, hundreds of thousands of dollars in dead salary every year for people who just aren't really doing that much. So you have to watch the bloated overhead. Lastly, as the saying goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Your success has brought on some pressure, and that makes sense, right? You have to make big, complex, high stakes, highly emotional sometimes decisions, and the cost for getting them wrong is very real. And yes, you're absolutely enjoying the abundance and the success that you've created, but you're also deeply entrenched in the meat grinder of running and leading a successful contracting or home service business. The way out of the leader phase is very simple, but not very easy. Simple, but not easy. It's all about building a leadership team. So think about it like this. With all the infrastructure in place, all the stuff that you built in that manager phase to get to this phase, the last big piece to the puzzle is installing senior leaders who can truly run the organization without your involvement. Now, these people are smart as hell. They are well paid, and they are hard to find. Depending on the size and shape of your business, you're usually looking for somewhere from 2 to 6 people that lead departments. Like, think about it like directors of operations and VPs of sales and titles of this nature. And maybe a GM or a COO too. Someone who can truly lead the whole organism, run a P&L, fire people, make tactical moves, all without involving you. There's really only 2 places to find your leadership team. They are either within your organization already or outside of it. The benefits of homegrown talent are obvious. They have a proven track record. Their values aligned. They know your customers. They know your processes. They're familiar with the building. Like they get it. But they need to be coached and developed into the leaders that you need them to become, right? You're building your leaders within. But very, very rarely does a business have everyone they need inside of it already. There's almost always a missing piece or 2 that needs to be added. This is usually someone a little more senior, with skills, with experience, with perspective that you nor anyone else in the business has already. And they're not sitting at home flipping through job postings, by the way. They're gainfully employed in a leadership role somewhere else, and it's your job to find them, court them, sell them on the vision you have, and bring them on board. Quick shout out, episode 77 called How to Build a Leadership Team with Dan Young explores exactly this. Really, really great for additional learning on building a leadership team. You need to become a true talent magnet. Again, simple, but not easy. 4th and final phase, we call the strategist. In the strategist phase, you've reached final form. You have well-built divisions with their respective leaders at the helm. You're involved exclusively with strategy and culture, literally just the fun stuff. Your business nets 10 to 20% every year. You can and do take weeks or sometimes even months off only to return to a thriving business. You've arrived. And you can now turn your focus to your family, your faith, your philanthropy, your hobbies. Hell, if you feel so inclined, you can go start a new business. But the point is, at this stage, you've got options. And that's a beautiful thing. Not everyone gets to the strategist phase, and the ones that do will tell you it took them longer and cost them more than they thought it would. But it was worth every minute and worth every dollar. Look, growing a business like yours is not easy. And like I said earlier, good things take time. If you want to move through these phases a little bit faster, with a few less mistakes and a bunch more fun, you'll probably need some help. Okay. And if that's you, I'm asking you to check out Breakthrough Academy. We systemize contracting businesses for growth. We are best suited to help entrepreneurs at the manager and the leader phase ascend into the strategist phase. To see if Breakthrough Academy is right for you, click the link in the description. That's it for me. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.